What are some of the common problems, challenges that this function runs into, and how do they overcome them?
Number one, unrealistic timelines. Even thinking back to my onboarding days, bringing clients on outreaches, customers would sign and say, hey, we want to be launched by next week. Okay, well, look, everything that we've been talking about, you have to align marketing and sales. You need to get your sales managers in line with what the process is. You need to do workflow interviews. You have to make sure your content's aligned and ready to go. Do we have stuff to send, right? Do we have cadences or sequences ready? And so oftentimes training is seen, well, it's not that big of a deal. Just tell people how to click this button over here and then have them run with it. Well, there's a lot of coordination up front to make sure we're actually training on the right things. These sales engagement platforms, when I first started, it was funny, I started at Outreach. We literally could put a couple emails together and hit send, and that's all the platform did. Today, there are these vast sort of programs where you can do the same thing 10 different ways. Depending on the workflow, there's an optimal way to do it. So I would say number one is just aligning the right timelines so training has the ability to be effective.
All right, so from a standpoint of how to overcome unrealistic timelines, what would you suggest?
Yeah, well, first off, as the enablement lead, you have to evangelize a little bit what your process looks like. To be fair, I don't think people realize the amount of work that it takes to actually do some of this. So it's important when you get into leadership meetings that early on you tell people, hey, when we do a new launch or we're going to work on something, here's what it actually takes to get this done. Here's the key people we talk to. Here's the timelines it gets done. Now, look, if you're in a startup and you're just getting going, training, you might hold all that information and you can do a training tomorrow. That is possible. But as your organization matures, you just need to show, here's the pieces of the puzzle, and then here's the time that it takes to put something out there. So again, just helping people understand what it takes is a big deal. And I would say the second thing is even building in, getting buy-in from the organization, sort of an enablement rhythm. So we've all fought with the calendar. Well, we can't do it on Thursday, maybe on Friday. Well, if we build in an enablement rhythm, on Wednesdays, we're going to send a digest that's going to have all the updates in the org. Every other Thursday, we're going to review those, and we're going to actually show you how to act on them. If you go to our shared space or our shared drive, whatever you're using, you'll see a running log of changes and updates in case you need to see them. So building a sort of mature system with that rhythm can allow those realistic timelines. So then you have a defense. Well, hey, our next training launch is going to be in 2 weeks, so put that in the queue. We'll get to it. We'll get it trained. We have 2 weeks to get ready now, and then here we go. So that really helps sort of empower that enablement person to say yes or no to things as opposed to just getting it thrown and chasing it.
Well, on the subject of empowering, the technical enablement function, as a leader, what can leaders do to support this function?
So number one, understand that training is not one and done. Nobody learns something one time and is really good at it the first time. It takes constant conditioning. Like think about your basketball days or something. Like you don't pick up a basketball for the first time and you're Steph Curry shooting threes from midcourt, right? You have to keep doing the same thing over and over again until folks get really good. So even training folks on these SEPs, that's a key thing that managers buy into this, that this is going to be an ongoing process. The second thing that we really need is we need that frontline manager support. Too often, purchasing decisions come from the top. It sort of skips the middle, and then there's just this idea that we'll just train the reps and it'll all work. But for rep adoption to happen, frontline managers, they need to be held accountable. They have to be involved in deciding what the reps are actually going to do. So they have to have a little autonomy to make decisions. And managers, ultimately, they don't need to be the same level of expert per se, but they do need to have at least a cursory understanding of what goes on in there and how it impacts their world. If you lose the frontline manager, you will lose the team. 100% of the time. So those are two things that come to mind right away.